What is good, everybody out there? Thanks for checking in with Court Thoughts, the channel where we basically talk basketball. On this episode of Court Thoughts Talks, I had the absolute pleasure and honor in sitting down and speaking all things basketball with my man, Sam Gruggen. Sam is currently an assistant coach for the Cairns Taipans, and he and I actually played basketball together back in 2015 for the Bankstown Bruins State League team. Hence the reason why I'm wearing this shirt. For those of you looking at the video edition of this podcast, we didn't actually win a chip, but it was one of the things that I remember spending so much time with him and just learning about the game, like talking about strategy, talking about the way that he approaches the game. And we definitely speak a lot on it during the podcast today. It's an absolute fantastic episode. I hope you guys enjoy it. I don't want to get in the way of you guys enjoying all the little nuggets and secret little gems that this guy's sprinkled all through this episode. So look, I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to let you sit back and enjoy today's episode. All right, let's get into it. Is this thing on? Welcome, Sammy G. Thank you for coming on. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, bro. When I was thinking about having a coach on, you were literally the first person that I was thinking of. So thank you so much for coming on and talking with us today. So first thing that I want to get into is, how did you get introduced to basketball, man?
Yeah, good question. I think I was in like year 4 in primary school. And a couple of teachers by the name of Miss Rawlings and Miss Austin, I think it was at the time. So Michelle Austin, they had a lot to do with Bankstown. I was at Picnic Point Primary, and they got me into basketball, and then kind of played an academy, which is Monday afternoon we play against a bunch of other schools, and then reps came after that, local comp and whatnot. But they were a huge driving force in kind of me participating and starting up basketball. And the cool thing about it was it's kind of come full circle. So Michelle Austin, her daughter ended up as a player in the program that I coached in New South Wales. So
Oh, that's
cool
mad.
that she kind of introduced me to basketball, and she was kind of, I guess, they say mentor, but just more of a person who introduced me to basketball, and then kind of went full circle, and then I got to coach her daughter. So that was pretty cool.
That's pretty wicked, bro. I remember when we were playing State League together, I said to you that we played as juniors, and you were like, yeah, whatever. And you couldn't remember. But I remember that we only played for like a year. And it was funny because you were still the same dude back then. No difference, bro. Was there a significant learning that you had from the game that stayed with you? Like, to give you a bit of an idea about where I'm coming from, right? Like, one that I constantly think about is you can't do things on your own. I remember playing with a guy in the junior level, and he was like massive ball hog. Wouldn't pass the ball. And then the coach that we had at the time ran this drill where he literally made him go against the full team, just to kind of emphasize the point to him that you might be able to get a point or two, but you're not going to be able to maintain any sort of winning chance against a whole team. Was there anything like that sort of hit home, whether it's in the way of basketball or, in life in general?
Yeah, I think, early on basketball was just something for fun and love participating with mates and whatnot. But I think coaching was that's where it started. You learn a few life lessons and whatnot. And one thing I've kind of always, one of my mottos has always been we are what they grow beyond. And that's one of the best privileges of all coaches to watch their athletes just move past them and grow beyond them. And that's not in a bad sense of, forget about them. It's just, our job as coaches is to develop the athlete to get to a certain level, and then to essentially go into another program that's better than our program. Yeah. Bankstown, it was always, you want to get the players up to a level in which they're adequate enough to then be a state team basketball player, and then they go to state teams. And then when I was in the high performance program at New South Wales Basketball, it was, you want to get them to a level in which they can go to the AIS or the COE is what it's called now, and then maybe go to college. So that's kind of what my motto is, and you want to develop players and people to the best of their ability and hopefully move past you and then grow beyond.
You touched on a couple of things like the Centre of Excellence and state programs and whatnot. Were there any particular development programs that you're a part of that sort of really resonated with you, like whether as a player or as a coach? I know that you were talking about your coaching experience.
Yeah, I wasn't a very good basketball player. I mean, I was good to
You
I was good at the
lie.
rep level. I was good at the rep level, but nothing really beyond that. I didn't really try out for a lot of things either, to be honest. Um, but I would say, I mean, the rep program at Bankstown was pretty good. I felt like there was a good cohort of coaches at that time, good crop of players. There was a good, healthy competition around New South Wales and Sydney, especially. Um, so I think all in all, that was um, pretty successful kind of program that Bankstown ran. But I didn't get the opportunity to really train or trial for programs beyond that. I guess all my knowledge would be drawn from me coaching today, not playing necessarily.
Yeah. How did you get involved in coaching?
Oh, that's another good question. Um, how did I get involved in coaching? I mean, I can't remember the exact moment, but it would have been when I was about 15 or 16. Just would have done some kind of learn to play coaching at Bankstown just for some pocket money and extra cash. Um, and then just fell in love with it then, as most coaches do. They just fall in love with the development side of it and helping athletes, I guess, progress and develop. And I mean, the competition is an element of it that we love, but I think first and foremost is just developing athletes, young people, just becoming better people and stuff like that. So that was probably my first taste of it in Bankstown, just doing learn to play, just earning $20 an hour, put that towards the kiddie and then hopefully buy something. I don't know what I would have bought, but yeah, that's kind of my oldest memory of starting to become a coach. And then it just, as time went on, I would have coached some rep teams. And then in year 11 at high school, I did some work experience with West Sydney Razorbacks, who were in the NBL at that time,
Yeah.
under Gordon McLeod and Mark Watkins. I did a week work experience there, and kind of when I finished school, then I went and did a little bit more experience with the West Sydney Razorbacks, and then they turned to Sydney Spirit, and then they folded.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where it all started, really.
Yeah. I remember those days back, man. Western Sydney Razorbacks. I've seen now that they started to release a lot of retro gear with their shirts
Yeah.
and stuff, and you see guys like Jason Kadee rocking the shirts and whatnot. It's pretty cool to see that sort of nostalgia. I do hope that they bring something back for Western Sydney because I do think they need it. Do you think those that work experience that you had with Western Sydney gave you sort of that first point of contact to then start getting into something a little bit more serious?
Yeah, definitely. At that time with West Sydney Razorbacks, I was kind of heavily coaching rep basketball at that time. I think my first team was under 16 Division 2 girls at Bankstown, and then I might have went to under 14 Division 1 boys, and I think I got my ass kicked in that. So then they demoted me and I had a Division 2 team or Division 3 team, and I had to prove that kind of, had to get rid of that arrogance, so to speak. But the West Sydney Razorbacks definitely kind of ignited that fire a little bit more. And then it's just the relationships that I built from that. So from doing the West Sydney Razorback stuff, Mark Watkins and Gordon McLeod moved on. Then Rob Beveridge came in with Sean Dennis and Brett Coxedge, and then I kept attending practices and essentially just being a rebounder. I was in charge of the clock. At that stage, then I was doing my PE teaching degree. I was working at a bar most nights. You start at 6 p.m. and finish at 4 a.m. or 2 a.m. and then get back up in the morning and go to practice and state league practice in between then as well. So that really ignited that, just that level of competition. You don't really know how much of a competitor you are until you kind of are around professional people in their field and some of the players that were ultra competitive. And then that kind of just drive that work ethic and then thirst for knowledge to become better and then hopefully become a pro coach eventually.
Speaking on your competitiveness, a little inside story about us two. So we were getting ready for like a season of state league or whatever, and I would go down to the stadium and stay there for like 2 hours, like 2-3 times a week. And Sammy would come down and run drills with me and work out with me and whatnot. Sam's the only dude to whoop my backside 7-0, make me rage quit and kick a ball. I still remember that day, bro. That was such a funny day.
Was that a court? Was it court four?
Yeah, it's like the back court, like where they used to have the
Yeah,
gym in the corner, the little hidden
yeah.
secret
Oh,
gym.
court three or court four? I can't remember which one it was, but yeah,
I
I
get
do remember
confused.
that.
The numbers of the courts in the back are really weird, but yeah.
Yeah, they are weird.
Was there any sort of unexpected hurdles in you getting into like the coaching discipline? So you obviously mentioned like juggling your life and whatnot, but then you know, obviously you're going to have to start off at the ground level. So doing things like rebounding, running the clock, you know, they're small jobs, but they're very important jobs in the grand scheme of things when you're looking at a team running efficiently. Were there any other hurdles that you had to get over, like any sort of acknowledgement pieces or degree stuff that you just didn't even anticipate when you were getting into that space?
Um, well, I mean, the good thing about coaching here, you don't really kind of need a degree. I know in Europe you do in order to become a coach, but there are courses you can do here. I guess my biggest hurdle, and again, I don't want to sound arrogant by any means, but when I was 21, I think I won a gold medal coaching New South Wales Metro in the Australian Junior Championships, and I kind of thought I was too good then. I thought I was really good. You know, like had a bit of arrogance about me as far as coaching goes, and I thought I deserved a team already, and a team at the next level already, and that was a big hurdle in overcoming that and just kind of centering myself and being like, okay, well, and you only learn this down the track, right? You don't know this at the time. You just have to listen to your mentors and your peers and whatnot, and you're in a circle, and then kind of navigate that minefield as best you can. But I guess that was one of my biggest hurdles, just overcoming that early success, you'd call it perhaps, and then thinking you're a little bit better than what you are, and then being kicked back down to earth and realizing, hey, you've got to work your butt off here. And you don't make it overnight, and it's a huge process here to become a coach. And there's times where you're without a job, and I can't remember who said it one time, but they said being a coach, you're either fired or about to be fired if you're going to try to become a professional basketball or a professional coach in any field, really, which is kind of true. So it's high risk, high risk, high reward, but it's definitely something I love.
Was there any sort of coaching inspirations that you had when you were growing up? Were there like any coaches that you were looking at that you were like, yeah, I want to coach just like him, or I want to be the Aussie equivalent of him?
Yeah, a few. Growing up, Mark Watkins was a huge mentor of mine. He was the reason why I got into Western New Razorbacks, and watching him, and you learn something off each coach. Even if it's something small, even if it's something what not to do as a coach, you learn something off everyone. So with Mark, his X's and O's were great. Um, his knowledge of the league and his scout was great. And then Rob Beveridge came into the league, and Rob Beveridge was fantastic with fundamentals. And he really taught me that no matter what level you're coaching at, you coach the same. You just simplify it, or you just don't speak as much or explain as much. So for the under 16, under 18 team, you might have to explain a little bit more just because they might not have the knowledge. But for the pros, you just wouldn't take as much time explaining it. So you do the same drills, just don't explain it as long, which I felt at the time. I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of true, right? You don't need to overcomplicate things. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Sean Dennis was great with Scouts, Sports Code, which is like a software that we use to break down games and show edits to players and scouts to players. And then just recently Adam Ford, I guess his detail and defense and how much of an eye opener it was that you just got to keep your system simple in the sense that don't have too many schemes, just be great at a few things, or be great at a couple of things. And I mean, it's worked pretty well for us this year.
I was going to say, I remember just before you headed off to your first coaching gig in the NBL, you were very much involved with how we were running, our systems when we were playing at Bankstown in our state league team. And one of the things that I loved about the way that you coached and just the way that you communicated is very much that point that you were talking about, is just keeping everything simple. Like I think we ran like 3 simple sets, and you were like, listen, don't overcomplicate it. The game's difficult enough. Just make it easy. This is what we're looking to do if they do this. This is what we're looking to do if they do this. We succeed in this area. Let's just try and make this happen more often. then they score. And I always think about that now. When I talk about it with my team or, in times that I've coached previously, I do the same thing. I'm like, hey, like, let's not overcomplicate it. So I think that's really powerful, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's true, right? It's hard though as coaches. Like I find myself, I'm coaching a team up here at the moment in the off season, and you find it hard to not over talk because you want them to understand everything, and you want to help them. You want to help them navigate the mess, but you don't want to you don't want to be the one that tells them how to do it. So that's something quite that's come into coaching quite a lot the last 5 to 10 years. It's just kind of get in there as a coach, say what you need to say, then leave. Don't explain things too much. Just let them navigate that field. And I felt like as junior players, when we were growing up, we kind of got told what to do and how to do everything, and we weren't able to explain or not explain, but just able to feel out the situation ourselves and learn from it. And the only time we ever really got to do that was when we played 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3. We just played pickup with each other, which kids just can't do nowadays as much because what I found in New South Wales, and this is just kind of looking at it from this snapshot, but in New South Wales, they had so many practices on, then they got their homework, then they got like rec practice, school practice, maybe an elite program practice, an individual coach, their homework, they're going to hang out with their friends. So the time to just go down to the local park and just play 2-on-2 with some mates and just figure out how to play basketball without a coach, without a referee, is valuable for those players.
Yeah, it's very true, man. Like I was very much a robot when I was a kid. Like you just do what you do,
We all were.
play hard, and then when you get into that older level, I would definitely say it's probably because you're playing more social basketball and you're responsible for what you're doing, or trying to dictate a little bit more of what you're going to do because you get a little bit more freedom when you get older in rep basketball, that you're just like, oh, I see this, so let's just try it. So yeah. You were talking a little bit before about how you communicate to adults and younger players, and you keep it very simple. Do you sort of have like a method to how you do that? Do you just try and keep it nice, short and sweet to like 3 points? Or are you focusing on only talking about certain things? Or how do you approach it?
Yeah, so with here in Cairns, with the Taipans, for our players, we go through what we call a roadmap, which is kind of looking at their development, looking at previous games, looking at the analytics side of things, and trying to help them become better basketball players. And they have a good idea of where they're at. I think as an adult, they know where their kind of basketball is. They know what their strengths are. They know what their weaknesses are. Whereas juniors, they don't. Like at juniors, it's really bizarre when you sit down and say to a player, "Oh, tell me all your strengths." And most players will maybe rattle off one strength, like they don't know. And then you say, "Oh, tell me your weaknesses," and they'll rattle off 5 or 6. So it's a good self-discovery moment for them. Something I like to use now with our players is, hey, let's say an exact clone walked through the door right now of you, an exact clone, and you got to play him one-on-one or her one-on-one. How would you guard them? And that's a great learning curve for any basketball player to sit back and go, because you can't lie to yourself. Like if an exact clone walked through the door of me and I played myself one-on-one, I would force myself right, and I'd make myself shoot a jump shot because I know they're skills that I can't do very well. So it's a great learning curve, experience, discovery for those basketball players, whether they're pros or whether they're juniors, because then they can go away and, again, not lie to themselves and list out, okay, these are actually some things I need to work on.
Yeah. When you first got into your NBL assistant coaching experience with Townsville, what was the experience like when you got told that you were going to be bumping up? Because we spoke very briefly about it, because I think when you got the call, we were like mid-season. And then you were like, yeah, righto, guys, see you later. And you bounced, and we were all so happy for you. But what was that feeling like when you got that call?
Oh, it was very overwhelming, excited, nervous, pumped, like all the emotions that you can think of. Felt like I was ready, but I wasn't when I look back at it now. But yeah, definitely excitement, proud that I had that opportunity, pumped and just thankful for everyone who's kind of had an impact in me getting to where I was at that moment. Um, so it was pretty cool. And then obviously getting up there and just, like I said before, the level of competitiveness is just so different to what you think it might be. And I thought I was competitive coaching rep basketball, coaching a state team and playing state league. You think you're really competitive. And then you get up there and it's people's livelihood, it's their job. So if they're not performing well, their job's under threat. So whenever anyone's backed into a corner, they're going to kind of, they're going to come at you if they've got some competitiveness to them. So not that we would ever back anyone to a corner, but again, this is their livelihood. So they're going to do the best they can. If they feel like you're stepping in the way of that, well, it's a hard environment to navigate. So it was a great learning experience. I was only 25 at the time. Like half the group was older than me. I remember I got paired up with Luke Schencher, who had played in the NBA at that time, previous to being with us in Townsville. It was like, hey, Sam, you got to work him out. And I went to Luke and I'm like, hey, Luke, hold on, my Siri's gone off. I went up to Luke and I was like, hey, you're like 5 years older than me. You're so much more experienced than me. How about I learn off you how to become a better coach? Which he was fantastic with as well.
That's good that you had that introspective look at it, though. Like, I think a lot of people in any sort of situation where they get like a moment of seniority, like, righto, mate, get ready, you're going to be running suicides. Like, they're just trying to flex. But no, that's good. What did you think you learned from that experience with him?
Relationships key, like building that relationship, the rapport with each other, having the trust with each other, not being fake, just being a normal person, because people see through that stuff straight away. So our routine was usually Luke wasn't able to do the strength and conditioning that some of the other players were able to do, just because for him it was about managing his body. So we would go off and do something, whether it's elliptic machine, some bike, some running, some rowing, whatever it might be, just to keep his fitness up. And that was just a great chance to kind of engage in communication with him and just share life experiences and learn as much as I can from him. And I asked him a ton of questions about the NBA and how good that was. So that was great. But yeah, I mean, relationships is a huge part of it, and just building that trust with each other is massive, and it goes a long way.
I think that's a big thing that makes the difference between a good coach and a great coach is just good relationships. Like being able to have a line in the sand to say, like, listen, this is my responsibility. I'm responsible for this. This is your responsibility for this. I will do everything that I can to help you succeed. Sometimes that might mean you're going to hear some things that you maybe don't want to hear. They're going to be criticisms that aren't going to be, great things that you want to hear, but I want to see the best in you. And I think if you are authentic, like what you were talking about, you can't be fake. That's a big difference. Like, that's the big difference between being good and great. So I appreciate you sharing that. Was there a welcome to the NBL experience that you had? Was there like, oh God, I'm here now?
I guess, one experience that stands out, and again, this kind of ties back to level of competitiveness, and we were at the Blitz. Was it 2015? This is when I was with Townsville Crocodiles, and it was in Townsville, the Blitz, and Sean Dennis, who was the head coach at the time, were in the game, and back at juniors, when you think about it, like if I'm head coaching, my assistant coach would come over. If I got a tech foul, for example, they come up and be like, hey, like, you got a tech, just calm down. I'm like, yeah, I'll try to. But the level of pressure isn't the same, right? The level of pressure at juniors when you're coaching rep basketball compared to now when you're coaching the NBL at the Blitz is different. So this situation, Sean Dennis, I think had got a tech foul by that stage, or had been warned. And there was a call, and he kind of went off at the referee and just kind of let them know that, hey, this might be the wrong call. And Nick Kay and Mitch Norton were sitting beside me. They're like, hey, Sam, just calm down, SD. And I said, all right, okay, yeah, sweet. So I got up and kind of just tapped him and said, hey, mate, calm down. And he just kind of flicked my arm away. And it's like, don't effing touch me. And I was like, what? Anyway, so then timeout called and there was some words exchanged, mainly from SD. I just kind of sat there and was like, oh, whatever. Not whatever, but I was like scared.
Yeah.
But it was, and again, after the game, it was like, hey, mate, like, love that you did that. Like, awesome. Just know that I'm in control. I know my boundaries and limits as a coach. I don't need you to kind of remind me, hey, calm down. So that was, and the point I'm getting at is it was a great moment to sit back and go, okay, one, we're not in rep basketball anymore, right? Like he's a very experienced coach. He knows the situation. He knows the environment that he's in. And two, how competitive that environment is, right? And some assistant coaches get caught in becoming yes men or yes girls, like yes men, yes girls, or yes women, in the sense that they won't, or they're too afraid to approach the coach during the game or to actually tell them what they truly think because they're worried that that coach might bite back. And it's always interesting to just take the message, don't take the vinegar in what's said. You know, like in the heat of the moment, you're not going to tone down me yelling at the players to then talking nicely to my assistant coach. I'm going to stay at that same tone. It's very hard to change the tone. So that was a cool wake up call to just, like I said, to realize that, hey, he knows what he's doing, and this level of competitiveness is next level. So I got to adjust.
On the pro level, as an assistant coach, there's obviously a couple of guys that you'll see that'll be sitting there with you, and you guys will have different sort of responsibilities, and I'm sure that stuff's sort of delegated. But for someone who's maybe looking at that and not really understanding what's happening, how would you simplify an explanation about what an assistant coach is for the team?
Yeah, good question. I think first and foremost, assistant coaches, they have to be kind of that in-between link between the players and the head coach. 100% always supporting the head coach and backing them and the system and what we're trying to achieve and making sure that information gets relayed back to the players. Sometimes we've got to be the good guys. We can't be the bad guy because that's technically what the head coach is supposed to be. So, that good cop, bad cop situation. Definitely building relationships to make sure that communication and that barrier is as smooth and transparent as possible. So that's from a kind of just, I think, a personal perspective. From an actual role and scout and kind of more detailed perspective, it's here at Cairns, there's 9 other teams, so I'll have 4 scouts. Kerry Williams will have 4 scouts, and Will Lopez will have 1 scout, and then we change it up year to year. So what will generally happen, there's 3 assistants, so 1 assistant, so let's say it's my scout, I will be in charge of not in charge, but I'll be more focused on the opposition play call. So Sydney was one of my teams this year, so I'd be in charge of kind of checking out their play calls and making sure that gets relayed to our point guard so we can be a little bit more prepared on defense. We know what might be happening, the patterns of play. Same with kind of personnel with the opposition, so where you want to pick up certain players and what our defensive schemes might be. That would be the role of the assistant that had the scout. And the other assistants would just more so be in charge of kind of runs that we might be doing offensively or defensively and just relaying that to 40 in the timeout. Like, hey, we've scored this many times of this play, or they've scored this many times of this play, those sorts of things. And then one other assistant would usually be in charge of like coding certain things during the game. So we call it flagging. So if something happened in the first quarter that we wasn't going to according to our game plan, we'd flag it, and then we'd show it at halftime in the change room so all the players knew exactly what we're talking about. So there were different roles. We tried to work together as much as we could, but it's hard sometimes when it's not your scout, so you don't exactly know what's going on. So you've got to kind of take care of your field to make sure that there's some synergy and everything works well.
Yeah. What was the experience like from a culture perspective, being involved with different teams? Because I know that you obviously spoke about your time with Townsville before, you're now with Cairns, but you were also with the Sydney Kings for a while, and I think even you were in Tassie, right? You were doing some development stuff in Tassie. What's basketball culture like in those areas? Like how did it differ?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that's different in all those areas is the weather. It's very hot up here in Cairns and it's freezing in Tassie. But I think the culture stays the same. Like, there's great people involved in basketball. It's such a small world. Um, for example, I coached Mirko Jeric back at Bankstown Bruins under 16s. I then coached Mirko Jeric at Townsville Crocodiles, an assistant coach, and now I'm coaching Mirko Jeric as an assistant coach here at Cairns Taipans. So you're talking from 2012 to now 2023. I've coached him three different times with three different teams. I mean, head coach is a junior, but assistant coach here. So it's such a small world. There's a lot of people that just kind of overlap, and I mean, it's really cool from that point of view. Um, a lot of it would be as far as at the junior level. I would say just depth of talent and population based. Like Tassie was a fantastic place to live and develop and meet new people, but there's just not the numbers there in Tasmania that there are maybe in Sydney. So there's more depth in Sydney. Now, in saying that, Tassie punch above their weight at all Australian Junior Championships. They do so well for the size of and the amount of players playing the game.
Yeah.
But the culture is fantastic, and it's culture is such a throwaway word nowadays as far as like, oh, you got to develop great culture and whatnot. But it's usually the people that you have involved. And here at Taipans, we want to make sure that we recruit great players or great people first. So having them that come in and compete and those sorts of things. So I think just great people all the way down the East Coast.
Sticking to that culture point, do you think culture is more important than strategy? Like, do you think you as like not specifically your team right now? I think you kind of evolve past this when you get into the upper echelons of competitiveness. But do you think that culture outweighs strategy sometimes? Like, you can have a poor strategy but the right guys with the right attitude and you can get the job done, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I definitely do agree with that. I think players who want to play for each other and play for their staff and play for the club and the team that they're playing for will, I feel like in most of my experiences, will supersede all strategy and anything that comes up. Here at Taipans and even at Sydney, but more so at Taipans now because we've actually had time to recruit a team. The first year we came, we inherited a lot of guys, and this year just gone, it was kind of clean slate. 40 got to kind of bring in whoever he wanted, and one of the biggest things that we always looked at was characteristics and what type of person they are. Are they competitive? What are their goals? Where do they want to get to? Like, do they want to go to the NBA? And those generally, like those aspirations, are a great driving factor. That okay, they're going to come here and they're going to compete because they have these aspirations to be at the next level. The only way to get to the next level is to actually, kill it at this level. So we recruit guys who we feel like will be great for our culture and fit in within our culture. We don't bring guys in and develop a culture around that. We want to recruit guys that fit into our culture. So I definitely think culture does, it is better than strategy. It's just you've got to have the right group of guys in order to achieve that.
So besides obviously your recruitment stuff, because I definitely can see where you're coming from. Like, if you getting the wrong person for the job, you're not going to be able to instill that right culture. You also touched on things like your honesty and transparency and like just being legitimately yourself. What else are you doing to sort of foster that positive culture in your basketball clubs that you're involved with?
Yeah, I think the club here, Cairns, for example, is a community-based club. So a lot of things that we do here, we want to show appreciation to the community, get out and get to the schools, and there's a great relationship here between the Taipans and the local association. So the local association is Cairns Basketball Association. So essentially Bankstown Bruins, which is their Cairns version.
Yep.
And the relationship here is great. Like there's people involved are in both, there's volunteers in both. So that is fantastic from an organisational cultural point of view. But from our one individually, we spent also in the inner circle with the team. We spent some time last year. We went down to North Queensland to visit the Cowboys and watch their practice for a whole week. And we watched their strength and conditioning, watched the coaching staff. We kind of watched how they were on the field. And the reason why we did that is because a few years ago, the new coach had come in and he inherited quite a lot of older players as well. And he cleared house last season, before the beginning of last season, brought a lot of new and younger players in. And we wanted to see how he went about his training habits. And I think they came second, or might have been the year before. He brought a new team in the year before, a younger team in, and they came second. They did really well, or third, something like that. So we looked at that and wanted to kind of mimic and copy a lot of those training habits because we we're going through a similar transition. And for him, for that coach, he just said a lot of things they were really focused in on, and it's funny in the sense that basketball teaching's now gone a little bit away from this, where when we were growing up, how much did we do 5-on-0? Like we did a lot of it, right? Just a lot of 5-on-0, a lot of plays without defense involved in it, just to get that muscle memory, retention, and whatnot. Yep. And then there's been a real big push to go away from that recently in basketball. Make it 5-on-3, 5-on-4, 5-on-5, just so you get that decision-making element to it. Yep. But it was funny going down to the Cowboys. It was all repetition. It was on 0, just rep. And that's all they did. Now, I know it's a different type of game. I understand that. But that was something we took away from it, where I was like, okay, well, we still want to have that element of decision-making, but we want to make sure we're repping a lot. So that was a great experience just to kind of see how their culture worked and how we can kind of tangle it into what we're trying to do here at the Taipans. So I feel like that had a big part to play in our culture and how we went about this year as well.
Yeah, that's actually quite funny. I never even thought about that. Like playing as a junior, how much we just did the same thing again and again and again. And it might even just be super basic things. Like you might have to just do, like full court transition stuff, but you're doing the same thing for what feels like an eternity when you're a kid. And you just do it over and over again. But those plays in and out. And then when you get older, and then now it is, I know for me now, I'm still playing at the state league level, that it's just we do a lot more situational stuff. Like we might do stuff to run through a play very softly with 0, so that, 5-on-0, so everyone understands the premise of what you're trying to achieve. But then when you start to actually interject it, you go, right, okay, so we're going to be looking to try and, really hit him here. So let's chuck in a couple defenders over this side and then get people used to it. But that balance of doing it against no one and getting reps in, and then actually doing it against live competition where they're going to know the play, they're going to cheat the play, which your defenders are going to figure that out, and then you got to cheat the cheat, if that makes sense. Like you got to sort of cut those corners.
But I mean, the luxury we have as well is we get to train every day, so we have more time on feet, right? So I'm not saying do on 0 for the entire time. Like that's not what I'm saying.
No, of course not.
I'm just saying the importance of it is still there. The relevance of it is still there for sure.
Yeah, for sure. When you I think in the early days of me doing my channel, I gave you a shout out. I'm sure that you saw it because my hordes of fans were probably sending it to your social media, congratulating you on your experience in the World Cup, in the Asia Cup. I think you were playing. You were with. Was it the under-16s team?
Under 17s.
Under 17s.
Oh, it's a weird. Yeah, you're right. Under 16s, under 17s. It's a weird situation. Just because of COVID, it made it a weird situation. But yeah.
What was that experience like?
Oh, like unbelievable. I mean, firstly to represent your country, it was Asia Cup. So we went to Qatar. So usually what happens is Asia Cup would have been in 2021. And then the World Cup would have been last year in 2022. But because of COVID, they had to kind of get it done as quickly as possible, and they couldn't do it during that window in 21. So they had to move it just before the World Cup. So it was a weird, because we were away for quite a while. So we were away for about 3 weeks all up, I think. But we went to Qatar. We first went to Canberra, had our pre-departure camp, and then we went to Qatar. Super hot, so hot. And that was a great experience because you come up against all Asia, so come against a lot of Asian teams there, and that was fantastic to kind of see their style of play and how they went about things and to see how we compared to them. And then we won Asia, which was great, and then we got the opportunity to go to Spain and Malaga we went and played in the World Cup, and that was in itself another great experience because the style of play is so different. So when you look at the world, there's just so many different styles of play. Like Asia is usually a style where they're like quick, they're fast, they're all about transition. Where then you get to the European style where it's like a lot of half court, a lot of conceptual play, a lot of intelligence and ball screens and how to play off that action. And then you go to the America style, and it's like, they're good at everything, right? They're quick, they're tall, they're athletic, they're conceptually smart, so all those sorts of things. So going up against different teams was fantastic from a scout point of view because it was a new challenge and provided a new challenge every game. But all in all, like the experience was unbelievable. You're in a World Cup, and even though it's under 17s, it's something that these kids they've never been to before, an experience that they've never had before. We had the opportunity to play Spain in the quarterfinals. So we played Spain pre-World Cup, so pre-tournament, and we got beat by 30 or something. And they're legit. Like they got guys who are the 7'3", 7 foot, 6'5". Like they're just huge.
It's Spain.
And they're very good at basketball, right? We know that worldwide. So we then played them in the quarterfinals, and we were up the entire game. I think we were up by 10 points going to the last quarter, and there was a few thousand people there watching in this big arena. That's an arena in Malaga, and it was a fantastic experience for the kids because they've never seen something like this, right? There's people playing the drums and music, and they've all got their colours on, their nation's colours, and it was all of Spain versus us, right? It was hardly any Australian support there or anything like that. So although we lost, I think by 1 or 2 points, like it was a devastating loss, but it was a fantastic experience for these kids that, hey, this could be something they're going to play in more. If they go to college, they're going to play in front of 15,000 people. If they go pro, they might play in front of 20,000 people. So it's great exposure for them. Great experience. Love the opportunity to coach for your country.
That's honestly, it's going to be a fantastic honor. I think when I talk to a lot of mates, like just about basketball in general, like everyone, I watch the NBL, I watch the NBA. I also like to watch a lot of EuroLeague, and I'll be like, bro, if you could play in front of anyone, to play in the EuroLeague just looks nuts because you see, like you watch like Partizan Belgrade and they're ripping flares in the middle of the stadium, and it's just wild. So I can only imagine, even at that level where, they're under 17s, there's this passion that sort of stems from their culture that sort of carries forward. I think of it the same way of how we are at, rugby. When you go to rugby league games and whatnot, and even if you're going to watch some school-age kids play, your niece or your nephew, whatever, play, you'll see that sort of passion carry along with the schools. So I can only imagine it. Was there any sort of countries that jumped out at you? You were like, whoa, wow, they got some real talent over here that you didn't even think about before?
Obviously America, USA, they were fantastic. They go 1 to 12. They're very deep. Spain were the intelligence, and even us as a nation. When I went to our pre-departure camp, the amount of offense that was put in, and the players could pick it up so quickly, and they understood concepts, and their IQ was off the charts. And you look back to when we played, and again, obviously we're never at that level, but I was like, wow, I didn't know this stuff till I was like 19, 20. And the fact that these 15-year-olds, one was 14, they're picking it up so quickly was unbelievable. So their IQ was fantastic. And that's a credit to the coaching here that they receive at their local associations throughout Australia and whatnot. But Spain definitely, Lithuania, like there's a few clubs. Poland were a team that kind of scraped into the World Cup, but played very hard, very physical, up the floor. France, very athletic. We didn't get to play France, but very athletic, very good in the open floor. So a lot of great teams, a lot of different styles. But it was great basketball to watch for the most part, and it's fantastic to see kind of what they're doing differently to us conceptually.
I was talking with my last guest on the show, Nick, about how now it's so much more common to see Aussie guys going over and playing college basketball, and you got like Tyrese Proctor, he's over at Duke now at the moment. I think with programs like Center of Excellence, obviously, and the Global Academy, the NBA Global Academy is a big aspect in developing talent. What else do you think is sort of contributing to it? You mentioned, like the coaching that players are getting at their local clubs. Do you think that overall is developing younger players' skill sets, or do you think it's the accessibility to information with the internet? What's sort of helping the game grow?
Yeah, I think it's a bunch of those things, like you just said. One, I think the exposure to the NBA is more than it's ever been. I mean, players can watch it on their phones. They watch it probably during school time, and they can then go onto YouTube and just Google Steph Curry drills or how Steph Curry shoots it, and it just kind of gives them a detailed explanation of how to do it. So that in itself is fantastic. I think the fact that there's so many Australians over in the NBA right now and in the WNBA, and then players can just relate to that. All male and female players, junior here, they can actually see a bridge now. Oh, you want to be like so and so, or you want to be like so and so. They're actually Australian, so they can be like, oh yeah, I could be like that person. So that helps them from that point of view. I feel like the local or us on the international level, we've gotten better. The boomers and the opals, when competing against the rest of the world, we're getting better there. And then the national level here, I think is getting better as well. So from a commercial point of view, I think more exposure, the levels are getting better here above kind of the junior level and whatnot, which helps them, I guess, gain some interest. I mean, like the biggest crowd Sydney's ever had was a few nights ago, game 3. So that itself is fantastic. And then down at the junior level, the coaches just getting better. The competition's getting better. The level's getting better because there's more players wanting to play and the depth gets wider, and then it's harder to make teams, and coaches are getting better because they get more accessibility to stuff that's on the internet as well. And I think it's a lot of things. There's nothing one that you can just point your finger to it, but a lot of those things are definitely help with it.
Yeah. Conceptually, when we were younger, at least the way that I remember the game played, I don't know, this just might have been my experience. We were playing a lot more like run and gun style, like just trying to push the ball up. And I think because maybe when you're younger, that IQ level's not really there. And we were talking about playing like a robot, just transition the ball up, get it really nice and quick. And it would be try to get it into the low post because it's as close to the ring as possible. And that was sort of the focus. Now with the game changing a lot more, where you start to see, guys run a lot more screen actions, whether they're running things like pin down sets with floppy, or they're running like horns and things like that to try and create that little bit of separation. Do you see the game continuing in that direction, or do you think we're sort of on the cusp of a change?
Yeah, I feel like we always follow trend of the NBA. I mean, you look at the last 10 to 15 years, the amount of three-point attempts 10 years ago compared to 1 year ago, like it's just through the roof. And that comes down a lot on analytics. So here at Taipans, we heavily look heavily on the analytics side of things. And when you look at points per possession, so how many points you can essentially get per possession, transition's the best way to score in basketball because it's usually numerical advantage. So it's like 5 on 4, 5 on 3. So you have the best opportunity to score. And then when you bring it down to the half court, that's usually when it's the least opportunity to score because it usually becomes 5 on 5. And we're just talking about in the transition phase there. And then you talk about pick and rolls and pin downs and cross screens and everything like that. It's just all about trying to create the advantage. So depending on the team you coach, would depend on the strength that you can look to create play out of. But like in the NBA, for example, heavy focus, and it's kind of changing a little bit because they're shooting a little bit more mid-range. But a lot of it's like shoot the three-pointer or get on the rim. Because points per possession, they're the best. 3-point shot is worth obviously 3 points. And if someone shoots a 3-point shot at 33%, they're essentially getting, or let's say it's more than that, let's say it's 50%, they're getting 1.5 points for that shot. Where if they shoot the 2-point shot at 50%, they're only getting 1 point. So that in itself, and then obviously getting to the rim and getting into the key and getting fouled, more chances because getting to the free throw line, teams like 85% from the free throw line. So I think we definitely follow suit of the NBA. It's going to be ever changing. It's going to go full circle. It will. It will go back to kind of maybe 3 out, 2 in again. I mean, I don't know, but at the moment, it's heavy on kind of 5 out and playing with space and pace, which works well in the NBA because there's that defensive 3 seconds as well, which opens up the key a little bit more, which we don't see as much, or we don't see in the FIBA rules. So follow trend in the NBA. have players play multiple positions and positionless basketball.
Yep.
However, I do think everything that you do is underpinned by skill. So you've got to have great fundamentals. And I think for all players to get better, they need to have good conceptual understanding. So it's important for coaches to put them in situations as juniors to kind of explore the pin down situation or the cross screen or the on ball screen just to become better.
Yeah, just to sort of widen their understanding of the game, like develop their basketball
yeah.
IQ. What else do you think that people can do to sort of broaden their IQ in understanding the game a little bit better?
As a coach or a player or both?
As both, actually. That's a good point. Yeah, both.
Yeah, I mean, as far as players go, just watch more basketball, play more basketball that's not structured, because that's, like you could run a pin down. If they switch it and they deny you, what do you do now? Like, it's a simple read, just kind of back cut, or you maybe go into a guard to guard screen or whatever it might be. But play more games where coaches and refs aren't dictating what happens.
Yep.
And then in saying that, coaches in game or in practices put players in situations where it's like 3-on-3, 4-on-4, and there's just like working on that sort of concept, like a stagger away or cross screen, down screen, or whatever it might be. For coaches, pardon me, and I was one of these coaches, there'd be times where you were too intimidated to get out there and speak to other coaches because you feel like they're going to say no. I know here up at the Taipans, we have a cohort of coaches throughout Australia that help us do certain things. And if any coach want to kind of reach out and be like, hey, look, I want to do this to better my coaching and understand, and we're all for it. Like, as long as you're a good person, and we obviously do a reference check and all that sort of stuff, just to make sure that we're bringing someone in that fits our culture. But 100%, like, get out there and just take a risk, because that's what I had to do when I was with the Razorbacks, and Mark Watkins and Gordon McLeod got moved on, and Rob Beveridge came in. I didn't know Rob Beveridge at all, didn't know him at all. And I somehow got his number off someone, and I called him up and I said, hey, look, is there any chance I can continue to come to practice and help out? And he was like, yeah, sure, of course. And I'm thankful for that, but I wouldn't have got that opportunity if I just didn't kind of suck it up and make the phone call.
Yeah, if you didn't take the risk and ask the question. So guys, listen, if you're going to reach out, if you got a Netflix doco about you, or there's a, Daily Telegraph article about you being dodgy, don't even bother, mate. Don't even bother.
Don't even bother.
All right, so we're going to get into my wrap-up section. All right, I call this the Fast Five. Now, the basic idea is I'm going to ask you questions, right? 5 questions. I want quick, snappy, fast answers. All right? Are you ready, bro?
I am.
Are you sure? Are you positive? This is going to be tricky.
I am.
All right.
We'll see. I might ask you to cut it out after.
All right, here we go. So, who would be the perfect one-on-one game and why? Who would be the perfect one-on-one game that you want to see? You can participate in it, or that you would physically see, and why?
You mean playing each other one-on-one?
Yeah, so 2 players.
LeBron James, Michael Jordan.
Absolutely. Who do you think would win? Am I cutting this out?
My heart wants to say Michael Jordan, but my head would probably say LeBron.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the 6'6" slender frame is not really going to be easy to match up against. Karl Malone is the way that I try and put it. It's not the same.
Yeah, true. But heart trumps everything. So who knows?
Yeah, very true. Very true. We definitely love Jordan.
I did see that.
Your dream starting 5. So who would be the ultimate 5 that you would want to have? Top 5, dead or alive. Doesn't matter. You can pick anyone.
So we spoke about this the other day in the office. So that's a cool question. I just can't remember my answers. I reckon point guard Magic Johnson.
I like that.
I'll go the ones that I definitely know, right?
Yep.
Point guard Magic Johnson, MJ 2.
Yep.
Like Larry Bird has to be in there. I'd probably. Yep. Larry at the 3. Then you're getting obviously LeBron at the 4. That's a good one. I think this is one we actually were talking about, the 5. I would say you got to go Big Shaq at the 5.
I don't think you could really go wrong with if you have
right.
If you got
so
a good
Timmy Duncan, do you go Duncan at the 5?
Oh, that's a good
There's a
one.
lot. Kareem, like
Yeah, I mean,
Bill Russell.
I would probably be more inclined to stick with Shaq at the 5 because if you've got someone like LeBron who can stretch the floor, he doesn't. He's not like a stretch 4. I don't look at him at like a stretch 4. I look at him more like a small forward, to be honest.
Yeah.
But he
There's
can play in the post.
Yeah, definitely. You're 100% right. There's actually a really cool book, and I recommend you read it. It's called The Captain's Class, if you haven't read it already.
Yeah.
Have you read that?
Nah, I haven't. I'm definitely going to go look
It's
for it after we get off.
it's really cool because what it does is a non-biased view of every single sporting team in history, and it looks at dynasty teams. So, for example, the Bulls who won it like 3 years in a row, I don't think cut it into this because they've got to be more than that. It's something to do with that. But he has all these categories and subcategories and how he filters through who the best captain of all time is. And there's teams in that like the New Zealand All Blacks. There's like an AFL team in there. I think the Australian female hockey team's in there. Yep. There's the Boston Celtics. And he talks about who the best captain is. And it's a really cool read to kind of go through the characteristics, what makes him a great captain. And it's interesting to see what traits the greatest captain there has compared to others. So it's a good read. I'd recommend it.
I'm definitely going to look into it, bro. Thank you. Thank you for the recommendation. If you had an opportunity to sit and pick anyone's brain regarding the game, who would it be and why? Could be anyone. Could be a coach. Could be a player. Anyone that you've got, I don't know, let's say 2 hours, and you can just ask them the most random questions that you want. Who are you asking?
Yeah, I'd probably say Greg Popovich.
That's a good one. Did you hear he's retiring after the season?
No, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I read it on Facebook, the most reliable source of information.
yeah.
But it's he's definitely a good one. I really do. I really think that he's one of the greatest basketball minds in the history of the game. My honest opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
Who is underappreciated as a talent in the NBL or the NBA right now? Like, who's the most underrated player that you think just isn't getting enough shine?
This is a tricky question for you. I probably can't answer the NBL.
Go to the NBA, mate. Don't get yourself into any hot water.
See, that's the thing. Like, the unfortunate thing is I don't watch a lot of NBA during the course of the season just because my life is basketball and I'm always on the computer watching basketball. So when I get home, the misso is like, well, you ain't watching basketball. So I don't get that opportunity as much.
All right. Well, how about this? Doesn't have to be of right now. It could be of all time. Just because I appreciate you, bro. I like you. I'm going to give you a little freebie there.
You know, like I really wanted D Rose to win a championship. Like, that's someone who I look at. I mean, definitely never, like, he definitely achieved a lot. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But he's a player who I felt like if he just stayed healthy, he had a few horrific injuries there at one stage. I would have loved to see him get a championship.
Yeah, I agree. There's that really good documentary that they released about him, and it's like that tail end. Okay. There's a doco that someone released, and it's like behind the scenes when he's going from the Bulls and he gets traded to the Knicks, and it's even got him receiving the call, getting told he's going to the Knicks and it's gut wrenching when you see it, but it's a really, really good doco. I'll find it. I'm gonna chuck it in the comments when I release the video, but I'll DM you, bro, about it. Speaking of movies,
who do you think the NBL one is? Underrated NBL.
NBL. Oh my god. I'd be lying to say that I'm super duper duper up to speed. I think that when it comes to the NBL, I watch a lot of compressed games. Like, I don't spend a lot of time watching full games. I don't know if you're the same. Like, if I get time, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, let's watch this game. But NBL, I can't say. A lot of the time, the people that I would look at is still like a talented player, so it's not underappreciated. Like Xavier Cooks is someone that I always thought was someone that I thought that should be in the NBA, and I mean he's going to the NBA now, but he's someone that I looked at and went, oh yeah, you should be in the NBA. just with your skill level. And they've got that series that they released out on KO where they're doing the behind the scenes stuff with the Kings.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think they got to do more stuff like that to help try and spread the game out more.
Yeah.
But he's someone that I think that should be getting more attention, but that's not really fair because he's known. So I don't know.
True.
I'm kind of skating by that answer. All right, now this one's going to be controversial. All right, this is the lucky last one. Favorite basketball movie of all time.
I mean, I've got to be quick, right? My first thought was Coach Carter.
That's a good one.
But then Hoosiers came to mind. Because I mean, everyone just talks about that.
Yeah.
But not Hoosiers. Like, it's kind of like, it's a bit old-fashioned, right? What's the one? Actually, I really like this one. I know I'm saying this. I don't. The one about the college team. I can't remember the name of it. I'll have to think about it. I can't remember the name of it. College basketball team come in and he coaches again. I forget the coach. Do you know, tell me your best three, and it might be one of those ones.
My best three? Far out! This guy! All right, so White Man Can't Jump has to be in there. Like,
see, I've never seen it.
Oh my God, bro. You know what? I might not release this video, bro. Far out. White Man Can't Jump. White Man Can't Jump for me is up there, 100%. Fantastic movie. The ones that you've mentioned are definitely really good, but one that I really, really love that I don't think gets anywhere near as much love as what it should is a movie called Heaven is a Playground. Heaven is a Playground is an absolute gun of a movie. There's actually like a lot of... I highly recommend go watch it. Like, it might be a little bit difficult to try and get your hands on. It's really, really good. But there's like this, there's a guy who played college ball, and they did a 30 for 30 about him. And I can't, I want to say Hank Gathers, but I know it's not Hank Gathers. It's Hank Gathers and this other guy. They were like part of this run and gun style that they were introducing in their college team. And this other guy's in there. It's a really, really good doco, really good movie. I don't want to, go watch it. And the last one, to me, Blue Chips, bro.
Yeah, Blue Chips is good. Blue Chips is really good.
Blue Chips,
really
just good. Nick Nolte kills it.
Like, he's good. He's good.
There's so many good ones though, bro. Like, I mean, even Air Bud you could say is a good movie.
I gotta find out this movie. This is gonna kill me until I figure out. Can you
remember who's in it?
Yeah, I can't remember the guy's name, but he's been in a lot of other movies. Oh. It's a college team. Glory Days.
Oh, yeah.
Is it
Glory Days or Glory Road? It's like
Glory
one of those.
Road, that's the one. Glory Road, yeah.
And it's like
the
during the years of segregation and whatnot. Is that what you thought? Yeah, that's a fantastic
that's a really good one. I love that movie.
The scene where they're in the lunchroom and he's like, I'm John Smith, power forward. And they're throwing it throwing the rubbish in the bin and stuff. So cheesy, but I love that movie. Fire movie.
It is a good movie.
Honestly, bro, thank you so much for jumping on with me and having a chat. I really do appreciate it. I do think that you've got, I've been really lucky to spend a lot of time with people on the court, off the court, just talking, shooting it, talking about basketball. And you're definitely one of the people that I name drop that I'm like, yeah, I actually know this guy and he's really smart. So... Thank you so much. Thank you so much for jumping on the podcast.
Appreciate you having us.
Thank you. All right, guys.
Thanks a lot.
See you later. Bye.
See you later.